Welcome to another week of the Transformation Leaders Podcast. I am Sean Ennis. My estimable co-host is still taking a week off, David Soden. We wish him well, and hopefully we can get him back in the next couple weeks. But today, I am joined by a good friend and colleague of mine, TJ Patterson with SemaCore. And he is a builder like all of you probably are. And I thought today would be a great day to talk about token maxing with TJ. So TJ, can you introduce yourself to the audience and tell everybody what you do?
Yeah, I'm TJ Patterson. I've been in the software space for about 34 years now. Been an architect for the last 20 years, roughly. And like a lot of us, jumped into AI building and was pretty quickly, able to pick up AI coding, and have been on about a 10-month journey building an enterprise-grade system. So, Sean, thanks for having me on.
Excellent. And again, maybe you, as in the audience out there, do not have not started the journey that TJ is on right now, or maybe they're thinking about it. But TJ is a really good example of what a year in of following the rabbit hole of, hey, I can start solving problems myself without a large development crew. And so I think this topic today is perfect for introducing TJ to the audience, and that is token maxing, right? Anybody who has done work with AI, specifically development work, understands what it's like to run out of tokens or the cost of those tokens, right? So let's talk this new word of token maxing. If you haven't heard it, it is maximizing AI token consumption as proof of productivity and adoption. So this is what a lot of people have done in the past, more so in the past than the present, but some people are still doing this. Corporations are using token consumption and the AI bills to prove that the team is using AI. And this is a pretty big issue. Many people, like AI just said, IBM just this last month said that token maxing is dead. And value maxing is what we need to be talking about. So a lot of this is in the news today, but what people have been doing in the past is having a leaderboard and tracking how much consumption by API key and assigning an API key to an employee. And this is how they were finding out who is using AI and what value they're getting. So the problem with that is very famously, Uber came out and spent its entire 26 AI budget by April, and that each of their 5,000 developers were using about $2,000 a month of AI costs. And what happened is the whole value curve of having fewer development people because they're using AI is shattered because they're spending so much on AI, right? This is not the only one. Microsoft back 2 months ago terminated use of Claude Code license for a whole division because they were spending too much. So what's happening is we're starting to see rationalization with AI consumption because of cost. Now, TJ, you are not a newbie when it comes down to using tokens. what has your experience been in A, consuming tokens, B, getting value from tokens, and being able to track the two?
There's a lot to unpack there. I'll say that it's across all of the builders that I know, from people who are just starting to get into AI building to highly experienced former hyperscale, VP level folks who are building and building new companies. The experience is largely the same. That in the beginning, there's massive token usage. It's breaking your budgets early on, and so you're kind of forced into looking for efficiencies and ways that you can optimize. Now, I think token maxing can be good for a short period of time in some organizations, especially if you're just beginning your journey or you're trying to get your organization to move towards building with AI, automating your internal systems. Then there can be some advantage there just for adoption, to get people really experimenting with it. But once you do start to use it to address any product, any commercial products, you've really got to start to look at building efficiency into your development processes, into your IDEs, and into the harnesses that you use.
Yeah. I mean, again, this just comes to a maturation process within organizations that are using AI. The first step people do with adoption is just get people to start using it. Then when people start using it, you need to understand and rationalize the business value that you're getting from it. And this is where, as a society, we are in with AI right now, is there are a lot of people still struggling. You hear this spoken by the AI deniers all the time, saying, look at all the proof of concepts that are failing. That is true. There's a lot of proof of concepts failing. They're failing because companies are coming in and saying, hey, we have a new widget, throw the widget at everything. And, eventually they may bump into value, but you need competency before you could start building, or at least building with value. And a lot of people just build has been their mantra, and the outcome has been AI slop and very large bills.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point, Sean. And it's very easy to kind of get deluded that when you see an application built and it pops up on your screen for the first time, as you know, there's a massive leap between doing a local host dev session and having a secure platform hosted in the cloud. So I think it's an important point to conserve tokens is to make sure that your people that are building are experienced architects, experienced software test folks make really good AI builders. It's very much a debugging process now. So there's a lot of portability between that system test type skill into an AI builder. Certain solution engineers and sales engineers also port well into it.
Yeah. So here is some of the proof points that everybody should know. The enterprise token spend year over year, January to April of this year, shows a 10x increase. So if you were using AI 18 months ago, you're probably using 10 times as much. And the cost of tokens has actually gone down, right? But your bills have gone up 73%. So pretty interesting that the cost per token is going down, mostly because a lot of people built on the older models. The older models required less sophistication and became cheaper and cheaper. And then here's the other thing that I love is in the last 9 months, you see per developer token use has gone up 19 times. 19 times. So this makes sense when you think about it, right? When you are a developer who's just now getting in and using this, and then when you start trusting the technology, you start using it. When you start using it, you start abusing it. I have taught several people I know building side projects for fun using the tokens at work. And that is a perfect example of a repeat of what I like to, what I've experienced during the internet age. Do you remember when internet used to pay by megabyte? People would use their internet connection at work to either download things that they shouldn't be downloading, or worse, they were uploading things to people who were paying them to download them illegally. So using other people's bandwidth. And that was addressed, if you remember. Do you remember the WebSense days? You know, proxying? Having a proxy to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. So this is not a new problem. It is an old problem that the people who are dealing with it completely forgot in their rush to do adoption. Everybody, it was like a land grab 18 months ago. Everybody wanted to start doing things with AI. Now they're talking about, okay, we need to start showing value for this. There's only so many resources that human resources that we can let go to save money. We're going to have to rationalize our AI budgets. So this is the thing, you know, what token cost depends upon entirely what you use. So if you look at Claude Fable 5, which is $30 per million tokens, and then you look at Haiku, which is $3 per token, so a 10x difference. There is a lot you can do with Haiku. If you're looking for summarization, if you're looking for data processing, data formatting, Haiku is great. If you're looking for the agentic figure a way out and business process automation, Fable 5 starts making a lot more sense. If you are trying to code complex apps in a single prompt, Fable 5 is amazing. If you're trying to troubleshoot a problem with a standard JavaScript, HTML, CSS based user interface, Haiku is more than sufficient. And what's happening is people are using a $30 model for a $3 problem.
Sure.
Now, what has your experience been? What models do you usually use, TJ, for your development processes? And why do you use them?
So what I try to do in every development process now, and this was, you know, school of hard knocks learning this, but is to use kind of a tiered routing for each job. So assigning an API call to the LLM that is cheapest and can accomplish the task at hand. So think of it like, you know, tiered dynamic routing, I think is what the industry calls it. Cursor does a great job of doing auto routing between different models and assigning the task. So some of the harnesses, some of the IDEs seem to be better than others at it. I came from VS Code And I was an early Rue fan, if you know what that is, coming out of anti-gravity. So I've tried a lot of the different IDEs and harnesses, and the one that I find to be best at controlling cost is Cursor. Codex is good at it, but it's not quite as good as what Cursor seems to be. But yeah, matching the model.
Our code is really bad at it.
Models that I use, primarily I use the Claude models for any of the coding work. I've started to move to GPT-5.6 Soul for really complex tasks. Amazing model, very fast. I find it's way better than Claude 4.8. Fable, I found not to be overly helpful in my development processes, other than maybe looking for across the code base type scans, useful for those types of applications. So that's in the development process. In the system, I have an orchestrated system of about 10 different product specific AIs that I use. And so, sub-agents, a main agent and sub-agents orchestrated. So within that, I use a wide combination of models for really complex tasks, things that are going to go back to one of our business users are going to be 5.6, GPT 5.6 right now. Some of the other tasks like summarizing and formatting, basic content writing, things like that. Obviously we use like a haiku model for sure, because it's so much cheaper. So, these are some of the complexities of building, that if you're really going to have an efficient AI transformation in your company, you really need to have some of these principles well understood, or you're going to waste a lot of money. There's people out there like Sean and me who can help with those types of things to help you think through, how you can build fast, and you should be building fast, but you should be building carefully and responsibly too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely agree. Every other month, they're coming out and changing models. And I've said this before, and I say it far too often. And for the people who watch this show, you probably know what I'm going to say, but we're still in the phase of dating your model, not marrying it. There are open models that are superior to Fable 5 that you can run on your own hardware. Just today, I read that Microsoft is spinning up some of the open source models to compete with OpenAI because they don't have to pay OpenAI to run those models.
Right.
And they own and invest in OpenAI. I want to be clear. So the game is constantly changing. There are products out there, as TJ said, like Cursor, that will do a lot of the work for you. But I would recommend, do a little bit of strategy and thinking before you start building. Not a lot, just enough to make sure you have context and you understand what needs to be built, why it needs to be built, how everything's going to connect together, because you're going to be responsible for the architecture or whatever outcome you create, even if AI creates it. This is a common mistake that people have. Yes, Fable 5 infamously or famously has this capability where you can write a single prompt and it will just figure it out in a best case. And that best case ends up being pretty impressive. Being lazy isn't a strategy. Some people will say, Sean, I'm going to use Fable 5 because if I miss something, it can catch it. and it's smart enough to catch my mistakes. And I would say, great, but perhaps you want to go through a requirements and design phase with Fable 5 first, which you can spend $20 a month to do uh, in a standard subscription model, and make sure that you have a full understanding and documentation of what needs to be built, how everything is going to work, so that you can feed a model like TJ was talking about and have Cursor build it the most efficiently way as possible.
Yeah.
So there are two schools of thought here. Me, I'm an engineer. An engineer plans stuff out, right? What other people are doing is they're saying, well, Sean, an engineer's mind costs money, and Fable 5 is good enough and cheaper than an engineer to build something. And I am just going to throw it against the wall and watch it stick. And I would say this is where AI slop comes from. This is where the world is pointing to the fact that AI produces low quality outcomes. You know, this goes back to, is AI going to replace all the developers? I do not believe so. At least it won't replace the architects. It's going to make the architects superheroes, and the people who all they knew how to do was to make sure where the semicolon goes in the code, yeah, they're not going to have a job. You know,
that's definitely what we're seeing. Yeah, and regarding the token maxing, if you're going to max tokens, do it in the planning stage. That's what I do. I try to use the top models for my planning stage. I often have two top models review each other's work before I start. And when you do these things, and you also break your sprints down and have good sprint hygiene, frequent commits, you really get much better results breaking the thing down rather than just trying to one shot, a design. So yeah, the really important things. All of these things will help you save tokens for sure.
As my elderly father taught me many years ago, many times, measure twice, cut once. And it is hilarious how applicable that wisdom lives throughout the ages. So, again, a lot of this stuff, why people are wasting money, they're defaulting to the frontier models first to do everything. They're building their agents to use it where it's not valuable to do. It's not efficient to do. They go through and they unbudget the agent loops. So it is just churning tokens repeatedly when there's no success that can happen. This is something that I see all the time. For example, the tool that the agentic experience is relying upon is down. So it's been built to go through and try that tool 15, 20 times to see if it comes back online. Going back and doing a retry probably makes sense. But this is the problem people have who are building things without an engineering mind. The context bloat, right? Taking all your data to run it on one question and then throwing the conversation away. I don't know how many times I've seen this.
Yeah.
Certainly, individuals that I work with, They say, Sean, I blow through all my tokens so quickly. I have to go up to the max model all the time. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? And they would literally, I would see their conversation history, and each conversation is a single question with all their context loaded. And they're not using projects in the UI. So
yeah,
big
and
thing.
there's simple things that we can do too, just in daily practice, like like we just said, breaking your project or your plan down into multiple phases, um, and starting new tasks. If you have a GPT 5.6 with a 1 million token window limit, that's a very large library of information that gets passed back and forth on each turn. Little things like context caching in your settings can help you reduce cost drastically, 30, 40%, things like this. But so there's a lot of little tricks and ways to do it. But, in talking with a lot of the builders that I know and work with, there's no real consistent way to do it yet. You can try to build it into your plans, build stops to where you have a model switch stop built into your plans, but it doesn't always adhere to them. And sometimes, I found that a top model will just continue in top model mode and not adhere to your switches. The automatic routing with some of the IDEs like Cursor or OpenRouter, I find that you lose a little bit of granular control over which models you actually select. So, today the best practice I've found just from my day-to-day work is to just start new tasks. I mean, it's keep your context small, use context caching, keep your reasoning, to a minimum. Use a like GPT has, or Sol has Terra, Sol, and what's the other model name they have now? The lower end one.
Luna.
Luna. So they've got Luna, Terra, Sol. So you can choose different reasoning strength on it, low, medium, or high. And there's also speed settings on some of these things that are gonna juice your tokens really quick. And you miss that one setting, and you can burn through $150 in tokens in a single sprint if you're not careful. So, there's no simple way to do it today. That I found. There's multiple things that you can do just in your dev processes, though, that can help you, not have bill shock, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a lot of people have failed pilots that are still running. That just goes with how uncareful people have become. And then there's the usage theater where, the only value that business can track is usage, which is the whole point that I want to make next, which is, usage is not value. The output is value. And if you cannot connect the two, you're perpetually going to have this problem. We all should have learned this in the data center hosting world, the public data center hyperscalers should have already taught us this. But looking for people who are using more tokens than everybody else should be a reason to sit down with that person and ask why. So monitoring usage as a proactive response to cost controls is being replaced right now than doing the whole leaderboard concept. Now it's seen as more of a negative than a positive, which means AI usage is maturing. Now, that waste, it ends up in the CFO's queue, And the CFO, as we saw with Uber, is being asked by industry investors, the Vanguards, the Bank of Americas, the whatnot, in the earnings meeting, what value are you getting for that spend? And unfortunately, the axe is not falling on the bad projects; it's failing on the unmeasured ones. So the people out there who are like, Sean, look, we're investing, we're doing proof of concepts, we're rolling out product. But when you overspend on AI and it lands on the desk of the CFO, or it lands in the arena of the investor, and you don't have a reasoning, you can't explain the value. Hey, we're generating X in revenue and we're spending Y in hosting costs, which includes AI. If you can't do that, the axe is going to fall on you. So what I recommend is that every query in every session should be tracked so that you can classify what value is being produced. Now, this can be done today through coding by your API keys so that you have a product, you create an API key for that product. It's one that's in production, there's one that's in development, and that you can track this very basically. If you're using it for assistive, exploratory, educational, you should be thinking about giving subscriptions to your folks, not doing a per token usage. But being able to use proxy products that exist out there in the market today that help break down and collect this data in more of a log format so that you can use data analytics to understand is another opportunity. But when people are spending millions of dollars a year on AI consumption, spending $75K a year on a product that is monitoring that usage and giving you real data and alerting when you're overusing could save you 10, 15, 20% of that $1 million. TJ, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does.
And so what you end up is you need to retire the whole token count things, giving a report to the CFO that isn't just the L in P&L, right? Here's the bill we got from OpenAI. That you go in there and you say, look, here's the bill from OpenAI. Here's what the breakdown of it was. Here's what was wasted. There's always going to be waste, right? You need to be upfront about that. Here's what our production systems are using. This is what our development team is using. This is, this is what, we have this tool that uses it. We have this tool that uses it so that they can understand, hey, this is our spend and why we're spending it.
That's a great point.
So, this is something that came, unfortunately, far too late in the data center world, which is you need to start right-sizing your AI usage immediately. You need to be analyzing those queries to say, hey, here is somebody using a frontier model to do data formatting and writing emails, right? We need to flag that, send it to a developer and said, hey, that's a bug, fix it. Because, that can definitely affect your bottom line, especially at the scale that AI provides you. So, I'd like to give people a roadmap. Maybe that's my software days coming through. But, you will want to go through and start collecting data, and you can set up very easily, again using AI, a solution to capture this information and structure the data so that you know what your spend is and what tokens are using for what queries. Number two, you can then start attributing that and assigning and processing that so that different teams, different products have different API keys. And then after that, you'll start getting reports. And I would not give the first report to the CFO if I were you. I would make sure I use the first report to find all the really egregious violations are addressed. And then, within the first 90, getting another 30 days to clean up some mess, you can commit to your CFO or whoever your investor is that you can give them proper data within 90 days of spend. And, the TJs of the world, the Seans of the world, the David Sodins of the world can help you do that. So I take a pause there, and TJ, I give you a last thought and tell everybody where they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, you can just reach me at TJ@SemaCore.AI. This is a great session, and kind of regardless of where you're at in your journey, some of the more advanced builders are definitely going to be kind of right there at the edge of the knife with us, trying to figure out how to cost optimize. Just quick things that I think that people can deploy quickly are going back through your deployment procedures and making sure that they're well notated, that your run books are well notated on model usage. Your plans have stops built into them, even if it's not an automated model switch. At least build these into your PRDs, so you can stop and make the model switches. It's ridiculous to use GPT 5.6 to deploy a new release to your staging lab. So I think there's been some really great information here.
And with that, I will call it an end to this episode. Check back with us every week. We like to release noon Eastern every Wednesday. And in the meantime, please hit the website, Transformation Leaders Podcast, and reach out to either me or Dave Soden in LinkedIn. But until next week, thanks again, TJ, for helping me out.
Oh, you bet, Sean. I enjoyed it. Good stuff.